Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Wine and Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Love, and today we have a special guest as we kick things off for the podcast before we even have headphones or microphones for both of us. We have one of each, and I'm very excited to have one of my best friends here presenting Shauna Thompson. Hello.
Hello.
We're here to talk about all things therapy,
Popular culture.
pop culture, sometimes football. Today, probably football.
Probably football today.
Because things got a little dramatic. How do you feel about the Michigan-Ohio State game?
So I'm a proud graduate of Michigan State University.
Yes.
So
Go Spartans, right?
Go Green. Yes, go Spartans. I'll be a little bit more proud during basketball season. But
I get it.
I feel like college games, that's why I enjoy college sports more than professional, because there's so much more heart. There's so much more, just
And up until
passion.
this past year, players weren't paid.
Yes. So definitely, but you're rooting for your school. Your your
wearing
heart
your colors.
Is just, yes.
Want your kids
all
to
the
go
things,
there.
Yes.
I get it.
So it's just always so much more exciting, and
Yeah.
I definitly can relate to,
So the rivalry.
The
Now,
intensity,
and of
yes.
course, with Rivalry Week, I'm an alumnus of the University of Georgia. So we had a big game. I don't know if you're up on what happened at our game last
I'm
night.
not.
Oh my gosh.
What happened?
You live in Georgia. So big rivalry
should
game.
know.
We usually beat Georgia Tech pretty handily, but this year they're having a really, really good season. So we were still favored to win. They were winning majority of the game.
Okay.
Came back and finally tied it in like the last 3 minutes, maybe the last minute of the fourth quarter.
I hate that.
Yeah,
That's
well, hang
like
on.
heart attack.
Oh man,
material.
yeah. Well, and two, like when you're a Georgia fan, like you expect to win that game because we're just we're better than the nerds, but at football.
Okay.
But
all right.
usually, but so finally tied it up. It went into 8 overtimes. It was the second longest college football
I did
game
not hear
in
about this.
history, and we won.
Well,
Barely.
good job.
44-42. I think it was 27-27.
All right. Go
I need to look. Yeah, go Dogs.
Yes.
But like, how embarrassing for us. But their quarterback, I think his name's Haynes King at Georgia Tech. Holy, he deserves all the praise because he did. I mean, like, it was impressive. What we didn't do combined with what he pulled off was incredible. But let's focus on your rivalry game-ish, even though it wasn't your game. It probably still felt that way.
It did.
So-
I mean, my timeline is going crazy right now.
Yeah.
So, I do understand. It's really just a bad look. It was a big fight. And
yeah, we have to recap what happened.
yeah, so,
So it was Ohio and Michigan
yes.
playing. Ohio severely favored, or Ohio State major player because they're
Yeah.
ranked 2 in the country,
Okay.
and Michigan wasn't even ranked.
Michigan's not ranked this year. I thought they were. Okay.
Nope. It was, I think they had a similar record to Georgia Tech, and neither were ranked. Or I could be wrong. I could be talking out of my butt. But either way. And so I didn't actually watch the game. Did you watch it?
I did not watch the game.
Oh my God, we're terrible. So this is a sports-ish podcast.
Sports-ish. Like that.
Actually, there is one of those already. And if you haven't checked out that podcast or that Instagram page, it's great.
Okay.
It's good for the ladies because it's like who dating and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But we're not her, though kudos to her. But so Michigan won. They beat Ohio State.
Okay.
Right? And it was at Ohio State.
Okay.
And yeah, so pretty close game. And then at the end, obviously people are like storming the field and the whole thing. And a player from Michigan, and watching the video back, it did not look like he was putting the flag in the middle of the field, but he had it, and I think it may have appeared that he was about to shove the flag and like plant it in their field.
Okay. Because I was wondering, was there a bad call? Like, what was
No, the game was over.
Okay.
The game was over. Michigan had won.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously at Ohio State, that creates a little bit of tension.
Oh, yeah.
And so this guy is like waving this Michigan flag, and one of the Ohio State players runs in and snatches it from him and like throws it on the ground and storms off. And when that happened, there was everybody on the field, both teams, and shit hit the fan, and they all got into this big brawl. And I think because there were so many people, they say, oh, the cops couldn't break them up, but it was like the riot mindset where it's like there's so many of them. Even if you do break up one, there's still all
there's
kind
18
of
other fights going on behind you.
and so the cops got out the pepper spray, and like there's video of it, and they're trying to separate them, and eventually the police and I think some of the coaches like created a wall, a human wall, and but yeah, so tell me your thoughts. How do we feel about Michigan?
Oh man, it's hard not to be biased. Let me preface by saying that. But University of Michigan has always touted themselves as Ivy League status, and we, kind of like we should be.
They're elite.
Yes,
they're better than everybody.
Just a little history, like part of the whole rivalry between Michigan and Michigan State is that they were in the Big Ten. Michigan State was trying to get into the Big Ten, and they kept blocking us, saying we should be the only Michigan school in the Big Ten.
Right.
Michigan State obviously met all qualifications and everything. We were let into the Big Ten really long time ago.
Yeah.
But for Michigan to always feel like, oh, we should be Ivy League, we're elite, our education is, top tier.
Yeah.
We always pride ourselves on, that was kind of a low blow. And I feel like there's a lot of alumni that's probably really embarrassed right now.
Yeah.
Because that broke out.
Yeah. So, in your mind, is it a bad look? Which is a worse look? That Ohio State lost and freaked out about the flag and the fight happened? Or is it a bad look that Michigan was kind of, if he was planting the flag in the middle of the field? Like, which is the worst look?
Oh, hands down.
Like, is
the
it
fight.
a sore loser kind of situation?
Yes, hands
or
down the fight. I feel like if you're a good sportsman, you take your losses, you go home, you lick your wounds, and
but it was at home. It was at Ohio State.
Yes, but okay, so Ohio State.
Yes.
Go home, chill.
Yeah,
you lost,
get off the field.
Accept it.
Let them celebrate.
Go back to the drawing board, figure out what you could have done differently, practice, get back in there. But to fight and to get into some sort of altercation, it looks bad on both ends.
I mean, even if after a loss like that, you're out of playoff contention. Like, if half of your team gets suspended, like, how are you going to be in the playoffs anyways?
That's sad. It's sad.
Like, don't be stupid.
Yeah, don't be crazy about it. There is so much riding on college sports and NCAA, especially schools like Ohio State, Michigan. They always do better football-wise.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people looking at that, especially if they want to go pro or if they decide, they want to be drafted or whatever, that's going to be looked at.
Yeah.
People are going to remember that.
Sure.
So, and especially when you get to the pros, I'm sure you really have to hold it together.
Right. And too, like, I was watching, like, because, my family group chat was, going crazy. Like, did you just see what happened? And I wasn't watching it. So I went, of course, the retired journalist in me is, like, going to find all of the videos and everything on X, formerly known as Twitter. And all of that, and because I was curious, like, what did it look like? What they say this was such a bad brawl, and truth be told, it wasn't like a crazy brawl. I didn't see any blood or anything nuts, but at the same time, with the massive people, it was like, okay, But my, like, big question is, with so much writing on it, I compare it to, like, okay, what is the opinion of the player as they move forward, and because you're watching all these videos because everybody has a camera out, especially when something like that is happening, because not only was it a big upset, so they're rolling their cameras as they're storming the field, not just the media but everybody that was storming the field, but seeing all of the different camera angles as the fight was breaking out, you can see what he was doing with the flag. You can see who was trying to break it up and who was starting it. And you can see, you know, like hearing the players be like, don't do this, man. Like, don't do this. We're going to the playoff, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, things like that, of course, don't really technically play into, you know, their career, but they do, because it's like, if you're the one that's caught on camera being like, no, F these guys, throwing punches and stuff, it's not a good look. Nobody likes a drama queen.
I'm sure at the time they felt like they were protecting their turf.
Speaking of. Go Dogs.
I'm sure they felt like they were protecting their turf, and they probably viewed that as
Sure.
disrespectful.
Yeah.
I get that, which is where the heart and the passion and all that comes in NCAA sports, but you just got to keep a level head. And these guys are young, you know, some of them might not even be 21 yet.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just, it's hard to say, oh, you should have kept a level head, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that. You're wilding out, your feelings are at an all-time high, I'm sure, on both sides.
But at the same time, like, you knew as soon as I turned this on, like, oh, we're sitting up straighter, we're fixing our stuff. If you know you're on camera, you're going to act a different way. Yeah. And, like, in an event like that, like, of course it's televised. Like, you know that all of that's on camera, but something like that, when multiple angles are hearing multiple things, and it's like a behind-the-scenes look, like, I get it.
Have that level of awareness, though.
True.
Everyone
yeah,
does
especially
not have that level-headedness.
Somebody that just got their heart broken because they just lost to an unranked team when they're number 2 in the country. You know,
I think the fact that they're young, these are college kids, the fact that emotions were high, and I think a lot of them just don't have those life experiences to be like, oh my goodness, this may follow me, you know, through my years, or you know, when I'm being drafted to the NFL, they're probably going to play this clip of me losing my mind.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things are not in your head at that time. I feel like that comes with years of experience. A lot of people in the NFL have, like, media training and, like, they need to be sat down and told how to discuss certain things with the media, how to keep, you know, certain...
how to look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and
to
be somewhat professional. I mean, you got to be a little bit professional.
You got to polish.
To the media. Yeah. So a lot of them don't have that, or they may not have that to the level that they should.
Right.
So, I mean...
Speaking of professionalism, turn your phone off. No, I'm just kidding.
So sorry.
But no, but to the same point, like, it's good and bad, because it does expose the guys that were trying to break it up, and the guys that were saying, hey, we're better than this, what are you guys doing? You know, and it's like, those are the ones who are in that moment, even if their head isn't level, they know they're on camera, so they're projecting this, like, good guy, like, no, like, blah, 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 because they know that there's a difference in awareness, where it's like, I know there's 1,000 cameras on me, and, like, even though I want to run in there and stab his eyeball with the, you know, with the end of the flagpole, I'm not going to do that, because there's a million eyeballs on me, and, you know, we'll never know the motivation behind good behavior or bad behavior, but I feel like there's some, you know, some commendment that should go toward, is commendment a word? I don't know. That should go to those guys that, like, kept it together and, like, tried to, you know, be cool, man, you know, that kind of thing.
Agree with that. You know, when I heard about the situation, like, today, the first time I really heard about it, I instantly thought of Malice in the Palace.
I don't know what that is.
So, I'm from Detroit.
Okay.
Hey.
I knew that. But.
So, Malice in the Palace was the Detroit Pistons and another team, Ron Artest. I forgot. But anyway, there was this fight on the basketball court in the middle of the game. No. They had a blue uniform. And
Orlando
mustard
Magic?
Stripes. No.
Mustard stripe? I don't know.
Ron Artest. Whatever team he was on in the 90s.
Sports-ish.
I know. So,
we're like the Diet Coke of sports talk.
But It was a huge brawl. It went up into the stands. Like, it was the players fighting, but it went up into the stands. And there was, I think some of them had to go to court. But
I believe it.
If
you
you
put your
look,
hands on somebody, that's assault, man.
But it was like a huge, I'm trying to remember what exactly started it. But there were certain players that were trying to hold them back and be like, man, this is your career.
Yeah.
Chill. Like, think about your kids, whatever. And then
think about your bills.
I know. And then there were some people that were like, "Nah, f that,"
Wow.
Blah, 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 blah.
They want to. It's like that warrior mindset where it's like, "No, I'm gonna win." And
so I was like, I just hope that through all the different angles, like you were saying, everyone was filming, and I'm sure like CBS Sports or
oh yeah, I mean it happened
NBC
live.
Sports,
They're still filming.
Game.
They're still live because it's a huge game.
And I'm sure people were coming down to interview some of the players or whatever.
Absolutely.
So
Cameras
I'm
everywhere.
sure with all of these different camera angles, I hope that they're able to see who were the peacemakers and who were the agitators and
and of course, like I said, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of like where their ranking is going to go, but it does beg the question like, where's their ranking going to go? Like, it doesn't matter for Michigan. They're not in the playoff. But Ohio State was ranked second in the country. Like, they were in the playoff. And, like, now their whole team is out there throwing a hissy.
I feel like not even what's going to
happen. And I like Ohio State. Don't get me wrong. I don't like Michigan either. You're like, whatever. Well, go green.
No, not even their ranking or what happens to playoff prospect or things like that. I'm wondering who's gonna get suspended for a game or two, who's gonna get taken off the field for however many months. Like, what is the fallout from all of this,
and like what does a coach do versus what does the Big Ten, is it the Big Ten, Big 12,
Big Ten,
what do they do? Like, what does the NCAA? Because there's so many different facets of like if you get in a fight at practice, then your coach comes down on you. If you get in a fight or you act like a jerk, on the sideline, your coach comes down on you. But you do something like that, what does that fall out? Like, is it court? Is it at the top? It's court. At the bottom, or at the next level, it's NCAA. At the next level, it's the Big 10, Big 12. Next level, it's your coach or the school and the coaches. Those are the things that you have to factor in. Like, if it's caught on camera that you landed a punch or like fish hooked some guy, like not a good look. So
definitely.
Well,
we'll see.
Either way, Georgia won. So it was ugly. It was ugly. It didn't feel good, but like, I mean, the Jackets deserved that win. They really did. But I'm a dog fan through and through, so I'm glad we pulled it out. It's just been kind of a frustrating season. So
I'm sure. Yeah, I don't watch too much football.
Yeah.
But basketball season, I'm in there with my stuff on. Go
there
green.
You go.
And I'm in there because we usually do pretty well.
Yeah.
So.
Y'all are always in. If I ever fill out one of those brackets, I like the colors of your team.
I always put us at least in the Elite Eight.
Okay. Till some like random like Davidson comes in and beats everybody. Cinderella story.
Nowhere comes in.
Yeah.
And
that was how we found Steph Curry. Didn't he play for Davidson? Am I crazy? Maybe.
I don't
answer
know.
that.
But that's the exciting thing about it. You know what I'm saying? You never know. That's
why they call it madness.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that's why I appreciate college sports so much better. No one has their contracts yet. No one's driving to practice in a Lamborghini. You know what I'm saying? They're
funny you should mention
I'm sure
that.
some of them.
Because I feel like, and this is totally my opinion here, but since Carson Beck, the quarterback for Georgia, like went, and now he's getting paid in the NIL or whatever it is.
Right.
There's a lot of talk about his Lamborghini and how that's been such a distraction.
How do you feel about college kids getting paid? How do you feel about that in general?
I don't really know how I feel. I feel like if I had a kid that was an athlete, I would fully support it. I'd be like, they're working just as hard as, as professional players because their expectations are super high, especially
and going to school at the same time.
Especially at like a top 5 ranked Division I school, like at Georgia. You're Alabama, Ohio State. Your expectations are very high, and so the amount, I feel like, as a parent and as a college student, the expectation not only to perform your job on the field and win games and have all that pressure, but also to keep your grades up, it takes away so much time from how else you make money. Like, even if you are full ride scholarship, and I remember when I was in school at UGA, before they got paid for anything, they would get little perks and stuff, because it was always really funny. One of the things, and I don't know if this is legal or not, but one of the things that the Georgia football players got when I was in school were those, like, you remember when scooters were really popular? Like not like the ride-on scooters like you see now, but like the scooters that you sit on, like a Vespa. And all the players got those, and seeing these like 6'5" offensive linemen riding around on their scooters. But it was like, that was the perk that they got, because they weren't paid as athletes. And you think, like, these kids can't get jobs because they don't have time, because they're always at practice. And like, sure, if they're on a full ride scholarship, then, they have housing, they have that kind of thing. But like, there's no like spending money or like things like that, like I had the Hope Scholarship, thank goodness, in college, so my tuition was totally paid, and I had financial aid and all of those things, but I had to work all the way through college to be able to live and pay all my bills and have some form of a social life. Like, my parents didn't pay for anything. They paid for they racked up that financial aid, buddy, though. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, so I feel like from a student standpoint and from a parent standpoint, I support that, but it's so hard to monitor it. It's so hard to control it. Like, how much can they make? What does the cap look like? Who decides who gets more than who else? Like, if I'm a walk-on, long snapper, and I see the quarterback roll up in a Lamborghini, and I'm like happy to be there because I just walked on and made the team, and I see him driving a Lamborghini because of what he's making, like, it's frustrating, like, you're the one who worked in HR, so you were the one who can sit here and say, like, oh, this is why we don't talk about salary. But like, when it's right there in your face, and they totally do, and I love the transparency, but that's kind of where I sit on it, where it's like, I'm neither here nor there, because I'm like, I get it, but I don't know how it all works. And I feel like it takes away some of the pride in, like, school spirit and stuff. So, like, I remember, I don't even know where this came from, but I remember, like, way back in the day, I dated a guy who was a big Yankees fan. His family was from New Jersey, whatever. And I remember he was like, when I was little, I cared a lot more about, like, who was on the team, because they wanted to be a Yankee. They wanted to play for the Yankees. But now that the Yankees, everything is paid for, and it's like, the team that has the most money can afford the best players, and they're the ones that win, it isn't as fun anymore. It's sort of like how fantasy football ruins the NFL in that sort of pride way, and that sort of, like, team loyalty, because it's like, yeah, you could be watching the Falcons or Cowboys game, but you're rooting for that guy because you got money on it, because he's on your fantasy football team and he's on the other team. It kind of takes that away. And I feel like that when it comes to a high school student choosing which school they want to go to, it's like, well, which one's going to pay me the most? And I don't love that. I don't love that feeling, because it's like it should be where you choose to go. It should be, you know, if you know your parents went to Georgia and you're from Georgia, and like all, you know, you have this, you know, loyalty to the school, but then Alabama swoops in and they're like, well, buddy, we'll give you a Lamborghini, you know, or I mean, that's not exactly how it works.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Where it's like the perks. I get it. Where an 18-year-old kid is going to be. Yeah. Yeah. So, what's your take? I'm curious.
College was the most fun.
Oh my God.
Life,
no kidding.
you know, but I did not. I never qualified for financial aid. My parents paid out of pocket, which sounds like, you know, awesome. But
I mean, it's, you know, it's just as normal as financial aid.
But I feel like because I knew my parents were really kind of just barely making it happen, I couldn't be like, oh, Mom, Dad, I need this, I want that, I need, you know what I mean?
New furniture.
There was not
give
like,
me a credit card.
Yeah, I never had this huge like
trust fund.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, sometimes my parents would send me a little bit here and there and be like, make it happen, sorry, you know, we're paying tuition and room and board and all those. And I'd be like, okay, I get it, I got it.
Did you live on campus?
I did.
For all 4 years?
For the first 3.
Okay.
And then my parents were like, if you become an RA in a dorm, which is free room and board, we'll try to get you a vehicle. So I was like,
oh, well, that makes sense.
Sold.
Yeah.
So I became an RA, got a little Grand Am. Okay.
Watch out.
Grand Am.
Watch out.
Just you wait. So, yeah, and then my last year I worked and had an apartment off campus with my friends. Yeah. But I never felt like, I never went hungry, but I would see people getting the money back, the refund back at the beginning of the year.
Excess checks.
And they would just be like ordering stuff, and let's order pizzas. And
when it's all borrowed money.
And I'm like,
you're like, I wish I had $1,300 to spend right now. Yeah, I get it.
And even the people that were smart and kind of made the rest of the semester happen with that money, like I never had that influx. But I'm saying all that to say there are basic needs that have to be met. Like, I have to go to the store and get deodorant, you know, toiletries, you know, things like that, just general clothes. Yeah. And they cannot work. Yeah. I was able to go get a job, you know, on campus and make my little money that I needed for, you know, my personal needs. But they can't do that. Yeah. So athletes. I'm in favor of athletes getting something.
Some form of stipend.
Should they be pulling up in a Lamborghini? No.
Right.
But I feel like if there's a good cap, you know, they can only maybe get
$25,000 a year.
Yeah, or maybe even $500 a month or $100 a week or whatever that money is. I feel like there should be a cap. They should be able to totally support themselves off of this. Yeah. But at the same time, they do need something because they can't go and get a job. They're in practice, they're studying, they're traveling, they're doing all these things. They're making the university so much money.
Right. See, that's the thing. I feel like that's where, you know, parents of athletes come in. They're like, my kid's face is all over everything. And here, like, yeah, you've got his room and board covered and he feels famous, but, like, he's eating hot dogs, you know, and things like that. So I get it from that standpoint. I remember, I think it was AJ Green who played for Georgia. He got in big trouble when it was found out that, like, allegedly he, like, sold some memorabilia that had his, like, likeness on it or his autograph or something like that, and he got in big trouble. And I just remember thinking, that's his face. That's his name. Like, the fact that he's getting legally penalized for that is where I'm like, okay.
They probably had it fine print somewhere.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's because the contract was that the players cannot make money on their name or likeness because they are students at the school. Like, and that's why, that's the whole thing, is that, okay, since they're doing all these commercials and stuff, they should be paid for them. And so it's like, I get it, you know, and in a sense, but it's touchy.
At a lot of schools, the sports drive us so much. You know, when you have a team that's constantly winning and you're having alumni and students and just general fans coming to the game, that's revenue for the university. So I feel 100%. Like the university should definitely be taking care of those students, which they do through scholarships and all that. I remember at Michigan State, my dorm was next to the dorm where all the football players stayed.
Ooh.
And but I would walk by and smell like their cafeteria, and I heard that they got, you know, steak for dinner, and, you know, we were eating like, I mean,
cafeteria food.
Our cafeteria was pretty good. But we
were again, at a Division I school, like they do have really, you know, I remember Georgia's was, it was good eating, you know, but the meal plan was expensive, you know, granted, I wasn't a college athlete with a full ride scholarship.
I did not gain the freshman 15. I gained like the freshman 22.
Nice.
So, I mean, the food is good.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact they justify, they need steak. They need all this protein. They need, so their meals were like beefed up and like.
Yeah. And and too, you know, there were those unwritten, like the scooters, like there were those unwritten things where it's like, oh well, so and so donated these, so and so donated these, but they're not coming from the school and they're not coming from the program. It's like so and so's dad
these
just
belong
happened,
to the school, but they're renting them out to certain.
Yeah, no. This was a gift. We just found it off a truck and like surprise. Here's, you know, a Vespa, and you know, so I get it, and I feel like that's them making it legal and making it okay is their way of sort of making it more transparent and being able to, you know, have contracts about that kind of stuff. But at the same time, like, that's so touchy. Like, I don't know.
There has to be a good cap and there has to be a lot of rules associated with that. I feel like I shouldn't be a sophomore in college driving
a Lamborghini.
Making
perhaps
as much as any regular NBA player or NFL player. You know, I just feel like there should be a good cap and a lot of rules about it.
And disclaimer, like, we don't know what all the rules are. I'm sure there are plenty.
Disclaimer.
And there's probably rules on, okay, but you have to graduate from the school. Like, you have to go for X amount of years.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, they don't want somebody, like, going and making $1 million on a Nike ad and then just bolting. Because it's like, we are still using you for your talent, you know. So, and I'm sure, I mean, I don't know what all of the fine print looks like, but there's probably a lot of it. So.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Anyway, so what were you going to say about Blac Chyna?
She looks
gears.
good.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, Blac Chyna is Rob Kardashian's
baby mama.
She had her own show on MTV for a moment,
Yeah.
aside from being on the Kardashians, and she was always very interesting.
Okay.
And so now she has gone through rehab. She has, you know, found her higher power.
She found Jesus.
Yes, and she is, you know, clean and eating right and working out. She got everything. It was in the news where she got everything, the lip injections and the booty fillers and the implants.
Gotcha.
And all of these random things, she had them taken out. And she really looks good now. And she seems to be...
Go ahead.
She seems to be more positive and a happier person. And just, I think on her MTV show, she was like cursing people out every other episode and being a diva and just...
I mean, that was kind of her...
her shtick.
Yeah, that was kind of her... I mean, her brand, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was just it was difficult to watch.
I'm trying to work on different shots. Look at you. You're so pretty.
Thank you. I tried.
Anyway, so she looks good.
She looks good.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. She's going to be on Love and Hip Hop Miami, which I have never watched Love and Hip Hop.
Okay.
Any of them. I was a little
I thought you did watch that.
I do not watch Love and Hip Hop.
Okay.
I'll watch.
What was the one that you did watch? You did watch
Love and Marriage, Huntsville, Love and Marriage, Detroit.
Is that what it was? Okay.
There were a few other shows that I watched, but never a Love and Hip Hop.
Yeah.
And I think there was a baseball one too, where they had baseball wives or something. I don't know. But yeah, I may actually watch Love and Hip Hop for the first time. But it's always been way too ratchet for me. There is.
What's your idea of ratchet? Give me the definition. See, one of the things about having Shauna as a best friend is we have different perspectives on all the things. And I love your opinion, and I love how, you know, we can talk about, you know, controversial things or racial things or discriminatory things, and it's very open and it's very honest conversation, and you know, it's nice because I feel like that's going to come out a lot on the show, because I'm going to ask you very, you know, very direct questions like, hey, I don't understand this, explain this to me, because I am in the business of like understanding versus, you know, just walking around ignorant about things. Like, I would much rather understand someone's perspective that has come from a different place than me. And
me too.
You know, simply about like the color of your skin, sure, obviously that's a big difference. But too, the perspective of I grew up in the South and you didn't. That's a whole nother animal.
Oh my goodness.
You know, like if our skin colors were reversed, it would be a totally different story. Like, you know, if you were a white girl from Michigan and I was a black girl from Atlanta, like it would be a different conversation.
It would.
But it's interesting to see the perspectives and you know, understand all of that. So anyway,
but
Love and Hip Hop, ratchet.
Like,
tell us.
The views
By the
expressed.
way, you haven't had a sip of your wine yet.
Oh.
Saying this is wine and therapy. Nice.
The views expressed by Shauna are strictly those of Shauna.
We should put a little lower
I know.
across the bottom, like just so no one can sue us.
So I don't like watching shows that are just way too out there as far as
like Flavor of Love. You didn't like that, or Bad Girls Club.
I couldn't do Bad Girls Club. I watched maybe like the first one with what's her name, Natalie Nunn. I watched that first one, and then after that, I was like,
I don't watch really any reality shows.
I just feel like certain shows reinforce this stereotype that's out there about black people, and it's cringy to me because
I mean, we've got the Real Housewives, so white women, it's just as bad, and The Bachelor, all the things.
It's like some of the shows are cool, like Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Yeah.
They do certain things. Yes, there's arguing. Yes, there may be a drink thrown in someone's face, but it's not every show.
No, it's not like how trashy can we get.
Yes, and it's like
it's not Honey Boo Boo.
It's such an embarrassment. Like, oh gosh, we look crazy, you know. And I think the part for me is that there are people out there that see it, and because they don't know anyone specifically, they think that a lot of us act that way, and so that's the embarrassing part to me.
And too, again, this is where like being in the South versus being, you know, in the Midwest or up North, like, you know, perspectives of how, you know, different races are stereotyped and supposed to act, or that expectation. Like, it is so different. When I lived in New England, I remember people being just blown away when I would even mention like racism. It was like it didn't exist up there, and they didn't know what I was talking about. And I'm like, huh?
Everybody knows.
But it was like they didn't understand the, I wouldn't go in that part of town by myself. Like, they did not, like, things like that was never, they were like, what do you mean? Like, go anywhere. And I'm like, no, but like, it's different. You know, you're legitimately unsafe here or there, or, you know, like, segregated prom, for God's sake, still exists in this state. You know, even though it's not that way, it still exists. You know, the school did away with it, 3 years ago? Whatever school it is. Forgive me. It's somewhere in South Georgia. But, like, the school did away with it, and they were like, we're not doing it. And the kids did it anyways. There was still a white prom and a black prom. And I just, and it's like, so when my New England friends would be like, what do you mean? Like, no way. I'm like, spend 5 minutes. 5 minutes in the South, in Mississippi, in Alabama, and, like, as a black person who was from, my daughter's godfather is a black guy from Brooklyn. And, it was like, I was like, you're going to come down and it's going to feel different. It's going to feel different. You're going to feel different. And he's like, no way. And he's so calm and so cool and so chill. But it was like, he was just, I mean, you bring him into freaking where I grew up, and it's, it's a whole different, you get looked at differently, and you get treated differently. And, and that's not to knock, people for being, well, yeah, it is. Don't be ignorant. It's ridiculous. You're stupid. You sound stupid, and you act stupid, and don't treat people like that. But anyway, but it was just funny because up until, like, he was here and, like, lived it and knew it, it was like this, no way, that doesn't exist. And I'm like, no, legit, it does. But I loved living in New England because it didn't, it was like it didn't even matter, and that's why it's so interesting coming back and, like,
I think experiences like that are everywhere. Going to Michigan State University, which when I went there, it was 7% black.
Yeah.
And there were 40,000.
And it's in Detroit?
No,
it's
Lansing, Michigan.
Lansing. Okay.
And so it's about 40,000, probably now a lot more than that, but it was 40,000 students, 7% black. So I did get questions. I remember my suite mates asking, like, oh my gosh, how do you do your hair? Or, oh my gosh, what do you have to do? And they would watch me wash it and blow it dry and straighten it and all the things. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, we've never seen this before. When I became an RA, one girl on my floor, she came up to me and she was like, you're the first black person I've met. She was a freshman.
Yeah.
And she was from Texas, and her grandmother told her that black people had tails. And so I turned around and I was like,
you're like, I'm not gonna pull my pants down, but, like,
she was the nicest. She was so nice, but she just had not met a black person in real life before.
And it's so interesting because that experience in Michigan, that was in Michigan, I feel like would be totally different in Georgia.
Yeah,
you would not if you were the only if it was 7% black and you were the only black RA and the only black person that anybody had seen, you would not be treated. I mean, it's generalizing.
Yeah,
but I feel like it might sound a little different. I mean, I dated someone whose grandparents would not allow black people in their home, inside their house. Like, oh, they can come swim in the pool, but they can't come in. And I'm 38. That happened 15 years ago. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
Were they older? Like, older?
No.
Okay.
Surprisingly, like, younger than my grandparents,
Really?
who are still alive. Like, younger than my grandparents. It was, it's pretty crazy. Like, and eventually, that respect did develop because, when you start hanging out with these people and it's like, Pawpaw, that's my best friend, not, then they begin to be more accepting. But at the same time, the fact of the matter that, like, he can't cross the threshold. Like, in this day and age, like, that person's family it's just crazy. And, like, so when people, again, up in New England, they were like, what do you mean? It was like, no, like, it's legit. It happens. Like, it's not how I was raised because, again, my mom's from the Midwest. So I was raised very, curious and respectful, and for the most part, I mean, I'm kind of sassy, but, but not mean, and more understanding and more, welcoming and it's just different.
I feel like you can always tell people that are genuinely curious versus people that are kind of
people that just touch your hair,
a little nasty about it. Yes, And so I'm never weird about having those conversations because
Sure.
some people just don't know.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a neighbor of ours who is also from Michigan. I won't say any names. But he was like, "Oh, you're from Michigan and you didn't learn how to swim when you were little? Oh my gosh." And, you know, just, oh. And I was like, I was from the inner city, first of all, but I was like, I challenge you to think of it this way. When my parents were coming up, they weren't allowed in public pools.
So they weren't comfortable teaching
so
you.
they weren't comfortable teaching me how to swim. And then when it was time to put me in activities, that just really didn't come to mind because that was someplace they were so used to having to stay away from. So I was like, you know, yes, my kids are learning how to swim. Like,
Yeah.
it's very important to me, but just not everyone has access. Not everyone, and even if they do have the access, they might not feel comfortable. So it's just so many different reasons. And I feel like when you look at it that way, just open your mind and just, you know, realize that not everyone came up the same way. Even if they're from the same city or from the same area or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to think of, like, the exposure that people have to things, you know, and, like, just because you lived a certain life right next door doesn't mean that, you know, there's not some crazy shit going on, you know, next door. And, I mean, it's just, I don't know. To me, it's just, it's better to be understanding and curious than it is to be judgmental, you know. But that's a whole nother book that we could write.
A whole nother book.
Yes, for another day.
Yes.
But anyway, anything else you want to unpack? We have been talking for, let's see, where are we at? 46 minutes.
It doesn't feel like it.
Welcome to the Shauna and Kelly Wine Therapy Podcast. Next time, hopefully, we'll have 2 microphones and 2 sets of headphones so I can actually hear myself.
And more wine.
And, yeah, well, we have more wine.
I
spilled an entire glass all over the floor when we were setting this up.
It's okay.
Gimli is currently sleeping on the towel that is on the floor from cleaning up the wine. So, there's my feet.
Shout out to Gimli.
Shout out to Gimli. He can't hear us, but he's with us.
Yes.
I mean, he's alive. Mostly. Kind of.
He is
on his way
cared
out.
for and loved.
In case you didn't know, Gimli is my geriatric pug. He is 14. He is deaf, going blind, and has IVDD, which is a neurological condition that prevents his back legs from working very well. So, he's a little decrepit. But we love him. He's stinky and snorty and cries if he's not within 6 inches of me, which is really sweet. But either way, we're going to wrap this up. Y'all have a good one. Go dogs. Go green.
Go green.
All right. Bye.
Bye.